Hello and welcome to the 97th episode of Growing Up Geek, the weekly podcast for geek entertainment and nostalgia. My name is Brad and I'm joined by my brother Rob.
Wizard!
Oh, somehow we're not doing it justice.
The Wizard.
The Wizard. For those who don't know, Idle Thumbs is ending.
Yeah.
That is a rad podcast that you and I both have been enjoying a lot for the last, you more recently, but me for longer.
Yeah, I've basically been going back and listening to all 50 episodes now that they've put up, and they've yet to release the last episode, but it's coming out tomorrow. And it's sad because they're like the gold standard, in my opinion, of, what a podcast should be.
I was really into this for a while, but I sort of felt like maybe I'm alone. Like, I sort of whittled down my podcasts, and then I was sort of getting rid of the ones that seemed to play up like the shock jock approach to podcasting.
Yeah.
And sort of whittle it down to the ones that have good, thoughtful discussion. And Penny Arcade podcast and that one sort of floated to the top. And I'm really glad that you've been enjoying it. Unfortunately, it's ending.
Yeah, I know. Well, the Penny Arcade is too far in between. And they said, like, Idle Thumbs will go on in some form or another. But here's my thing. I definitely recommend anybody listening to this podcast to check out their archive. Head over to idlethumbs.net.
Yes.
And click on the archives link. Because it honestly is like the Freaks and Geeks or Firefly of podcasts. Because you can go back and listen to it. And just the nature of the show, a lot of the discussions they have are relevant.
Right.
The news might not be, but they're still so entrenched in their game philosophies and stuff like that. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's funny when they announced that they were going to be canceled. I thought of Firefly, and I was like, "Oh crap! This is going to be one of those things I like that doesn't go on." But in this case,
curse you, Fox.
No, that's the thing. We can't blame the evil corporation in this case. It's personal reasons. One of them got hired at a really cool company, and so wish them the best.
Yes.
But in honor of that show, you've been playing Far Cry 2.
I have indeed. And like anybody who's listening to that show knows, they just can't get away from talking about that game.
Right.
Like they started early on and it was just like a game they were talking about, like you and I talk about Arkham Asylum or something.
I think for this show it would be Rock Band would be the thing that we beat to death.
I'm saying like the intention was just talk about it once or twice and then stop. And they just ended up constantly coming back to it. And every time they talk about a new game, they'd always be like, "Oh yeah, this reminds me of like Far Cry 2 whenever." So I've been playing Far Cry 2. I got it at a discount rate.
Can I just say real quick, a game that I thought nothing of until I listened to that show and heard their praise, and it seems like they largely liked it because of reasons that other people hated it, which is like difficulty, sort of like the thing that's happening right now with Demon Souls.
Right.
It's like when Jeff Gerstmann got fired, the whole industry was like, should reviews change? And we even did a podcast about that. Games like Far Cry 2 and Demon Souls are like causing the industry to really talk about like hard gaming.
Right. Well, because I think that what's going on here is a split kind of... I mean, you can use the term hardcore gamer and casual gamer, but I also think that it's
even more split than that, right?
Well, it's investment gaming.
Yeah.
I recently got back into Animal Crossing as well.
Yeah.
And because at first I hated that game, I was like, this is crap. There's nothing to do. There's no goals or anything. Like, I have to come up with stuff to do. But then I realized, like, that's such a terrible way to live.
Well, yeah, I was thinking it's just like life.
I'm waiting for somebody to give me a task to do, and then it better be obvious what I'm supposed to do, or I'm going to complain about it.
Yeah.
This is the thing with Far Cry 2, and I recommend anybody find a game that you know very little about, and maybe picking up and playing it, because knowing nothing really about this game, it's been really fun to discover what it's about, Mm-hmm. It really just throws you in there, and I'm like, oh, all right, I'm in Africa, and I'm hunting this guy, and I got malaria, and what do I do? And there's a moment where I realized I could ride in a boat, and I was like, awesome, it was such a simple thing, like you get to ride in a boat, but it made finding that boat on my own. And then I pulled out my map and I looked at them like, hey, I can get to this place by taking this boat. And it wasn't like anybody told me to do that.
Right.
It was just that boat was there and this place could be reached in there. And so I get on there and then I feel like I'm on like this safari adventure, like riding my boat. And I think that's the thing is it's these games like adventure games, like old school adventure games with difficult puzzles or like Animal Crossing or whatever, where it's really up to you to create your own solutions and create your own problems and to kind of participate in the game. And they call it emergent gameplay, but I think it's something that we've just been losing touch with as the game industry has gone on and tried to give people, get them addicted to greater returns for less effort.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this more because I'm such a fan of easy games and fun games lately.
Right.
And largely because I just don't have the time anymore to invest. But I've been giving this thought because it is true that having games become dumber and easier and helping you along and giving you more, tips along the way. I don't think we mentioned that Brutal Legend actually had a built-in tip system that would give you more clues the worse you do, basically. And that kind of stuff almost, teaches you to be like a lazy or a selfish gamer, whereas stuff like that, like Far Cry where your guns break or you get malaria, like, correct me if I'm wrong, do you almost like savor it more, like enjoy it more because you're earning it more, or you're taking it less for granted?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you accomplish something, you have a more genuine sense of accomplishment.
Right.
I actually emailed the Idle Thumbs guy hoping that they read this, but about how games kind of instill a sense of entitlement in people.
Yeah.
And that maybe that is causing the downward spiral of standards in games.
Yeah.
Because whenever games first came out and you had things like the adventure genre, which were popular, like Myst, which had puzzles that you had to obsess over to solve, people who were living their lives out were used to that kind of thing. They're like, well, I have to work day and night on this stupid presentation, and I don't even know if anybody's going to accept my idea. But that's that same mentality. But these days, people want satisfaction fast for doing a simple thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of crap. And I think you don't have to spend hours and hours all at once playing Far Cry 2, but you can play it a little bit here and a little bit there, and as long as you're willing to just kind of go into that virtual reality, life mode, it actually becomes a pretty fun game. And as long as you're just willing to kind of forget about what it ought to be and just let it be what it is, you can really start to enjoy yourself and really just discovering what is in this game and how rich it actually can become. It really makes for a great gameplay experience that you won't find in any of these 10-hour play and go games that you get at Blockbuster or whatever.
Yeah. And I certainly, like I said, I come from a place now where I really enjoy the game that just focuses on fun, but I appreciate somebody trying to do something new, always. And it sounds like that's what happened with that game, and you're always going to split the audience, but the ones who enjoy it, it seems like they're really going to hold on to it. I would like to call out a game that I think is doing that.
Oh, yeah?
And actually, I'm a little late to this party. So Zeno Clash is a game by like a really small, I think, Chilean team based out of Chile. And Atlas is their name. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I finally got to play the first level of this last night at Jason's house. I went over there trying to bribe him to let me play Uncharted, as I mentioned before. He actually didn't have Uncharted, but he did have Zeno Clash, and I got to finally play this. And this is a game that has a very tribal, almost Dark Crystal style of artwork. Very fantasy, but like nothing in this game is cliche. All the way down to, okay, it's a first-person shooter, right? And you've got your hands up in front of you, sort of like Condemned. You can get weapons. None of the weapons look typical. They're all sort of these tribal, like leather-bound, weird, or like carved out of like a grapefruit. It's a pistol, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of the characters that you meet are very strange and very unique. Like, I can't believe that it's such a small team. There was a fight that literally broke out, and it was fighting like a chicken man, a girl with like a straw hat, and a guy with like a cyclops eye, something like that. Very diverse. And then when I'm fighting them, he's like, now look at the people that are around you, but I couldn't until the fight ended. Finally, the fight ended. I look at the spectators that are standing around me in this like village, this really weird like organic village, and all of these people are like oddballs. Like one guy's like made out of a basket, one guy's eyes are bugging out, and I was just like, yeah. Like as soon as I saw this, I was like, this is so cool. Like it was welling up inside of me that somebody did something different, Like, even the reload, he's like, press R to reload, and I reload, and basically my character takes the two, like, grapefruit guns, puts them one on top of the other and like turns them, and that's the reloading in this world. You know what I mean?
Wow.
It's almost like they forced their minds to go in different directions. The tutorial where they teach you how to fight is this weird guy. He has chickens all around him, and you're in this like nether world just for the tutorial. It reminded me of Zen from Half-Life. You remember that part in Half-Life that we all remember? I mean, where you basically beam into Zen for like 4 seconds.
Yeah.
And you get this brief glimpse, and you're like, man, I wish I could see more of this. It's like that, only it's a tutorial. Weird trees are bending up into the sky, and this guy standing there with his deep voice saying, like, now throw a rock at the chicken, you know? And you're just like, where am I? Like, what is happening? But at the same time, you've never done that before, and I was eating it up. The game is coming to Xbox Live Arcade. I can't wait. Sometime spring 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to give a shout out to that while I could. Have you seen anything about that game?
I just now started looking at screenshots, and you're right. It's crazy. It's like a cross between like Riven and Oddworld.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So aside from like the art direction, like gameplay wise, you said like a fight broke out. So is this like an RPG, like Oblivion?
No, it's first person. It's first person shooter basically, but with the ability to have hand to hand combat.
Okay.
And with the keyboard controls, it actually felt kind of weird. I was not really able to. I was joking with Jason that like I needed like a finger to grow backwards out of the side of my hand. He admitted it was a little bit weird, even for people that are used to PC controls, which I'm not. But I think it's going to benefit from the Xbox controller.
Sweet.
And yeah, it had some of that good like Condemned style fighting where you're punching a dude in the face from your perspective. But also there's weapons and things, and the game begins with you killing the god of this world and not knowing why. And the god of the world is this weird bird-style creature named Father Mother. So, like, just everything about it is unique. And I'm super late to this game. I realize. Apologies for people that are probably, like, shouting that they've already played this. It's only $20 on Steam now. But, dude, I'm very excited.
Yeah, whatever, you know. It's another thing. Like, if you haven't heard of it, pick it up and just go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I also wanted to give a quick shout out on the subject of originality to Paranormal Activity, which I saw over the weekend.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been mentioning this is the scariest movie ever. Okay, I just want to quickly put that aside.
Okay.
Because I think scariness is really a personal thing. I certainly thought it had its share of creeps. I know we slept with the lights on that night. So it definitely gets under your skin, and it does a lot of that with the unseen, which is especially cool if you think about it. You know, it's not what you do see. But I want to put the scariness factor aside because you might be scared by it, you might not. But regardless, I think why you need to see this movie and take it seriously is its tactical approach to a horror film. Like, it was made on like $15,000, I think, very cheaply. 2 actors who both act the heck out of their scenes, and also very realistic in its portrayal of a relationship. You know, the guy like kills a spider for the girl and everything. Like, you know, he buys the camera and immediately her first question is, how much did that cost?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, totally. Immediately it had me in the mindset of like, okay, this is a real relationship in this house. And like they invite a psychic over, and I was like, this conversation is real. Like, it didn't feel like movie psychic where he's like, dim the lights.
Right.
You know, it was completely realistic. You know, it beat Saw at the box office, and I could not be happier about that. Like, this kind of horror that's more grounded in just like under your skin, you know, true suspense. It's the harder thing to do, you know. And you've been watching Saw, so you know, like all the CG gore and everything. Like, this is the thing that's tougher to actually do. And they did it on almost no budget, and they did it with 2 actors. I thought this was a better horror film than a ton of billion-dollar horror films.
Cool. You know what? Like, I wasn't even interested in seeing it, but now I kind of am. Thanks to you.
Yeah, if someone... Thank you, viewer, listener. If someone is interested in seeing this movie, I really don't recommend renting it.
Really?
Because the audience added so much, and the sound in the theater adds a lot too. I would hesitate to try to use your home speakers to recreate the same effect. But yeah, that's Paranormal Activity. Just sort of in that vein of originality, you know?
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I guess that's why they're always showing the audience in the commercials for the TV. Like, they never show the movie, which is maybe why I've never thought of going to see it. But they're like, look at the audience reacting. And maybe it's because I've seen that plenty of times and it's fake, you know, but this is probably real.
Exactly. Yeah, no, those commercials are what started to intrigue me, and it's sort of spread like a dare almost across the country,
Right.
where it's like, have you done it? Have you seen this movie? And like I said, put aside the scariness, just see this movie because it's a darn good horror movie, and it's made on like no budget.
Yeah, it's like the Blair Witch back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I've been talking for a while. Why don't you tell us about V?
V, yeah. I mean, kind of your and I mutual assignment this week was to watch
You're an
V.
I. That sounds like the worst nickname ever.
You're an I.
Oh, I think that's a
From
character
Zeno
in,
Clash.
Yeah, that's from Zeno Clash. Okay, yes, we collectively.
Yes, we decided to watch V, and unfortunately, it was a bad time for me to discover that since I've canceled cable, I've never tried to watch ABC, and it turns out I don't get it too well.
Right.
So I had to literally walk around the house with my computer, and I have like this thing called the Elgato iTV, which is
what? That means the cat.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But it's made made by Elgato. It's for Mac. It's this awesome, like completely awesome receiver that you can hook in there. So I managed to find it, and I got it in HD on my laptop, which was sweet.
Oh, nice.
And it even has like a DVR feature, but unfortunately I didn't get it going until about a half hour in.
Right.
But I don't think I missed too much. Like I can fill in the gaps as to what happened.
Yeah, you basically missed scenes from ID4.
Yeah, essentially. Here comes a UFO. Oh no, is it going to blow us up? No, it's a hot chick. All right.
Well, set this show up for people real quick. This is a remake.
It's a remake of a 1980s miniseries, which was about aliens who came to Earth, and everybody's worried at first, but then it turns out that the aliens look just like humans and maybe are actually more attractive than regular humans. And
especially because in the 80s version, they wore like Michael Jackson red leather jumpsuits.
Well, you had to have that.
Yeah.
And so humanity gains their trust. So they're really the good scenario of alien visitation, which is that they want to come, share their technology with us, befriend us, all this good stuff. But it then turns out that they were in fact not good aliens and not quite good looking either.
Well, and that's the thing that the premiere even kind of gives that. So I don't think we're giving away a lot. The premiere sort of hints at that right away.
That's my first strike against this.
Okay.
Granted, the trailer gave it away, but I was like, couldn't they have held out? This is the network that brought us Lost, and Flash Forward and all these things where we're just like, what's going on? Is it or is it not? Are the others good or are the others bad? These aliens are coming, representing themselves as these good ambassadors, and so I felt like they should have at least had a few episodes, maybe 3, where we're sitting there going, are they good? Are they evil? Are people overreacting? Are these movements, just like terrorist cells? Like, who do we trust? I like that feeling, but this reminds me more of when ABC launched Surface, which came out after, the Lost explosion. And it was that same thing where they could have waited to show their cards,
Yeah, I think maybe the reason they did that is because they know that people like us who grew up watching the original and being terrified of it on the bus with their friends who displayed posters of women with lizard faces, that we already know what's coming, and that, maybe they shouldn't keep their cards hidden for that long. I will say that I agree with you in that it hits the gas and just does not stop, and in a bad way. Like, they give you so much stuff in this one episode that I almost couldn't latch on to any one thing. They introduce, and it's the classic problem of a pilot. You have to introduce all these characters. You have to sort of set this thing up. But I mean, they literally have the aliens land, get to know people, gain their trust, start to give doubts, have, a son leave his mother and join up with them, like all within the first episode. And it was really moving fast. And I felt like it could have slowed down and had us almost get to know this alien culture, these people, why we should care about them a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, take Battlestar Galactica, for example. Even though it's based on an old show and people kind of know who the good guys and the bad guys are, it doesn't mean that when you remake it, it has to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I almost wish that the aliens were good, and that was like a twist, because everybody's expecting, based on the old miniseries, for them to be evil.
Yeah. And also, so much has come since V that, like, that's actually the sort of sadness that I felt as soon as this show started, which I was very excited to watch. As soon as it started and the ships were coming down, I was like, oh man, I just realized that this is no longer unique in any way, And they even kind of reference that in the show, and they kind of crack this bad ID4 joke. The one kid's like, oh man, it's just like Independence Day. And then somebody else remarks, which copied off of a million TV shows and stuff, and it's like, wah, wah. Acknowledging that doesn't make it go away. The fact that, this is kind of a cliche, these aliens landing.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing. I think this show does have potential to be interesting.
Right.
And I think it's just going to take digging into this world and these characters more. Unfortunately, this episode just blasts through.
Yeah.
Probably to try to get people hooked, but in doing so, almost lost me. Like, is there anything here I still need to...
Right. It's like, what? Well, any questions? No.
Yeah, it just blasts right through to the, it's like lizard face. I will say it's also very TV. Unfortunately, I expected it might be a little bit elevated, but there was some bad slang in there. I mean, you mentioned before we started recording the whole V's.
Yeah, like
thing.
that calling them the V's.
Very quickly.
Why? Why do you do that? Like, oh, sorry, just... V's are coming for us.
Yeah, here come the V's.
It's the visitors, the aliens, anything else you could say. I feel like they were almost like, oh, we have to justify our bizarre title. No, you don't. You don't have to do that at all. People will figure it out. They're smart.
Yeah, here's some words for you. There will be blood.
Yeah.
No Country for Old Men. I mean, things can be named something cryptic nowadays. There's also a point, I don't know if you saw this, where the mother was, disciplining the son for tagging.
Right.
He was spray painting V on the wall, and she was like, have you been tagging? And I was like, oh man, what a MySpace commercial, like anti-pedophilia commercial that this is. Like, no parent actually says, have you been tagging?
Maybe like their writer was like 18 and like didn't know the old term for it. He's like, oh, you mean like spray painting or graffiti?
No, it's the old writer researching on the internet what's a cool word for something, which never works. And like I said, I like the concept, and I still think the concept could be strong. I also like the hints that they gave of kind of a resistance,
right?
A faction of the V's who are potentially on the human side, because that may be the twist that you're looking for. Like, they're not strictly evil. There's also, and I honestly can't remember if that was in the original show. The things that stand out for me, and actually the writers acknowledge this, that when you ask most people, what do you remember? They're like, giant gerbils being eaten and red jumpsuits, and it's like, yeah, I'm right there. Like, those are my most remembered things, and they've said, don't worry, we're going to hit on all that.
Oh, good.
And I almost want to watch it just to see where they go.
As long as they get the gerbils in there, they'll have me as a loyal viewer.
Which looks god-awful now, by the way, if you YouTube that scene, that once scared the crap out of me. Talk about rubber puppet face galore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so here's the premiere. Will you watch more?
No. I'm not particularly compelled to watch any more of this show.
It's too bad.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's too bad. It seems like such a thing that's up our alley. They give us these free treats. They say, hey, remember this beloved thing? Here's a remake for you, and most of the time that backfires.
But during that show, there was a commercial for Flash Forward, which I didn't know much about, and then I was just instantly like, I want to watch that show. Like, It took very little for that to hook me, but it was just like, here's a mystery that we've yet to reveal, and you have to watch it for us to reveal it. Like, the V is just like, hey, there's aliens, and they actually think they're good, but they turn out to be bad. Bye.
Yes, well, that was V. That is our thoughts on V. And speaking of bye, we're closing up on the end of our show here. That's lame. But this is episode 9. Oh, sorry. This is episode...
Is the end of our show frequently populated by bisexuals?
Oh, gosh.
Speaking of bi.
Yeah, this is episode 97. And in honor of that, I want to talk about some more technology graveyard stuff.
Ooh.
It was canceled in 1997. And this one is, for me, personally, the most painful piece of dead technology by Panasonic, and I'm sure that you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Yes, the ill-fated M2. A console that probably nobody... I mean, honestly, my devotion to this console, and people are probably shocked that I even just said that, but I'll let you explain a little bit about that from your perspective. But, like, it wasn't rational. But I was way into this thing. I was collecting magazine articles about this technology. It was made by 3DO, and it was sold to Matsushita, who is also known as Panasonic. A CD-based system, 3D graphics, supposedly capable of doing like 1 million polys a second, which at the time was a big deal. And this was right when N64 had come out.
Right.
And to be honest, I felt jealous of N64. I had a PlayStation. I always pimped the idea of CD-based gaming, and I even wrote like forum posts.
Yeah, antagonists online.
Exactly.
Keyword ant on AOL.
Yes. And I posted about how CDs were better than cartridges, and when the possibility of a like fully like 1 million polygon a second CD-based system came up, I hooked onto it. And what was it like from your perspective? I don't know. Like, I think you caught the excitement a little bit.
Oh yeah, I thought it was sweet. Didn't we get in a car accident around that time?
Probably.
And I was concerned because if you died, you wouldn't get to see the M2 come out.
That's such a
seriously.
That was our greatest concern.
And it was an intriguing piece of technology, way up there on vaporware charts.
Yeah. I mean, it had renders, and it had, like, versions of it. In fact, because I think 3D was involved, there was going to be, like, multiple units, like a Panasonic version, a Gold Star version, a 3DO.
That's what they did with the original 3DO, and that's why we were excited about this. It was the first 64-bit CD-based system.
Exactly.
And that, to us, was the perfect combination. It was just, everything good about the N64 and the PlayStation put together. Yeah. I remember seeing the renderings, like, here's this goblin character, from this first-person game that's supposedly in the works. And here's this racing game where the wheels are round. There's these aren't octagons or anything. These are round wheels, and get a load of that.
Sadly, these are the exact things that I was lusting over. Like, look how round the wheels are.
Right. And I think that the thing about vaporware that just hooks so many people is that there are so few details about it. Mm-hmm. Like, I doubt there was any real, honest, like, gameplay footage being shown. It was just all renderings.
Yeah.
And so that got people excited. And, I mean, M2, there are, like, things out there that you can get on eBay or like, I hear the technology is now, like, used in hospital machines.
It's actually worse. It's so much worse than that. It's used in Japanese coffee vending machines and automated teller machines. I read that on Wikipedia, and it's like, oh god, like the technology was put to use, obviously. And Jason told me, that you can maybe like eBay the actual system, and I was like, oh man, wouldn't that be such a sweet? Just I don't know if it'd be sad or if it'd be glorious to actually have it, but I actually created a manila folder that I wrote M2 on the front, and I collected articles from Next Generation, GamePro, anything that would put out an article, printed out stuff online. I even found a comrade in arms online who would join in with me and make a website, like a fan site.
Yeah, you had a website.
Yeah, devoted to M2, and I updated it frequently with like new screenshots of different games. The only real game I remember, I think there was like 3 games announced for it.
Yeah.
But the only one I remember was D2.
D2.
Which was the sequel to a Saturn game / PC game called D, obviously, Duh, which stood for Duh, apparently. No, but it was like this girl that was like this child of the devil or the child of Dracula, whatever.
Yeah, I thought it was Dracula.
Yeah, and like, it probably wasn't very good. The real reason I liked M2 was because it was a 64-bit CD-based system. It was the anti-N64, and it was a period of time when we could only afford our one system. Come to think of it, that's still true. But eventually nobody gave a crap about bits. That was sort of the last time that anybody actually cared.
Right, and even polygon counts became kind of a weird thing to base it on because PlayStation 2 was announced during this whole thing, and it was like, it's like 50 million. We were just like, what? Like.
I know no one really counts polys anymore, or it makes me wonder when the new Xbox or PlayStation is announced. And I really sense that I will still get excited because there's still something pure about the introduction of a new piece of hardware. I know you always care about the controllers. Yeah. But when they announce the next system, like, are you going to read the tech specs and like comb through the polygon count?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, you want to have some sort of meter to determine which is the better hardware.
Right.
But unfortunately, these days, it comes so much down to developer input and development tools. Whereas Saturn, didn't win over the PlayStation because Saturn was still kind of a cartridge system,
right?
But it had a CD drive, and it was more about two-dimensional graphics, whereas the PlayStation was 3D. Yeah. I feel like Microsoft won out over PlayStation 3 this time because the PlayStation 3 was focusing on putting all this power in the system.
Yeah.
Microsoft was focusing on making really good development tools.
And those are the
really
things.
Solid SDKs. I guess it's not over.
It's not over, and I was going to say, let's not be naive. Like the NPD numbers coming out recently seem to suggest PS3 is definitely pulling up into position. And I think for me, it's more about features now. Like which one downloads movies, which one's going to download games. The whole reason I bought the 360 was like the live standards that they had in place, like gamer score and all that stuff. I was like, now that is cool. The graphics have arrived. I'm constantly impressed by the stuff that the latest games do over and over and over again. Like it used to be that you would be impressed at the beginning and then by the end you'd be like, this sucks.
Well, no, I still like Far Cry 2 still impresses me, and all this other like stuff I'll play. I'll be like, wow, Resident Evil 5.
Oh yeah.
Just stuff looks incredible, and a lot of it looks like the shots that M2 was claiming to be.
I know. Finally, it's up to the tech demos
right.
of years past. I still remember the Ultra 64 screenshots that they had. Like they were the tech demo shots of like Mario and Luigi standing on like a city block.
Yeah.
Remember that? It was weird. It was just like a render from some random SGI like clip art, and then like insert Nintendo characters to make it Nintendo.
Yeah, that was totally bizarre. Like the Robotech thing was like, it was an SGI rendered workstation thing, and but we were convinced that was gonna actually happen. It never did.
It's weird
until maybe now. Like the way games look now is pretty much that.
Yeah,
vaporware is always going to be an interesting allure. I mean, even these days, you have the Phantom, and you have, OnLive is...
I was about to say, people are telling me that OnLive is starting to feel like it could be the M2, of this generation. And I hope it's not. I'm signed up for the beta. Yeah. I really want to try this thing out. But I know some friends that are like, dude, that is vaporware. And it's like, we'll see.
But I think just like the M2, it represents kind of an interest in a direction for the industry to go. And that's why they're so interesting. Yeah. I got into the Nuon for a while, which was Project X, which is now just a technology in DVD players that makes them a little more interactive. Like OnLive might, for example, spur, stuff coming into the next Xbox or whatever. And definitely Wii has created this whole new controller concept. So
yeah, it's seldom the first kid on the block that does it.
Right.
But that's normally the one that I get excited about.
Yeah.
It's sort of like how I was into the Sidekick because I really wanted the iPhone, but it didn't exist yet. Yeah. That's sort of what it was with M2. It's like I wanted what it would deliver, which was later delivered by... In fact, D2 was later ported to the Dreamcast, and I would say Dreamcast was probably the actual M2.
Yep.
And then later on, like the successful version of that would be like the PS2.
Very successful.
But it's interesting to see trace history and see how that goes. Yeah. So that is going to wrap it up for this week. If you would like to follow us on Twitter, you may do so at twitter.com/GUGBrad and GUGRob. You can always email us your questions, thoughts, concerns, what have yous at mail@growing-up-geek.com. Once again, my name is Brad.
And I am Dracula, or Dracul, or Drac, or Duh.
And we will see you next week.
The Wizard.